Wait, flip on that box that it's on.
Right.
Thank you.
Right behind you.
So when you get there, just you want to level it out there on that line.
Okay.
All right.
He's coming down now. Okay.
Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you for coming. I just concluded some really interesting and exciting meetings about the future of Atlantic City with some of the folks who have made some of the biggest and most important investments in Atlantic City over the course of time. And so I look forward to continuing to work with them to continue to bring some revitalization back to the city. We've seen progress already, and we're going to continue to see more, I suspect. So I want to introduce them for some comments, and I'll come back and take questions. But first, Jim Murin is the chairman and CEO of MGM Resorts International, and one of the really most important companies to the future of Atlantic City. I welcome Jim. I thank him for being here and inviting him to the podium.
Thank you. Well, good afternoon, everyone, and it's a pleasure. In fact, it's an honor to be here. We just had a very productive meeting with the governor, and I first want to stop and thank you, Governor, because Atlantic City has been under a tremendous amount of duress. It's required some strong political and economic action. Without that action, I can only imagine where Atlantic City would be today. As the governor said, I'm the chairman and CEO of MGM Resorts. MGM Resorts owns Borgata, and we're very proud that Tom Balance, the president of Borgata, is with us today, along with the president of MGM, Bill Hornbuckle. We believe very strongly in the future of Atlantic City. We wouldn't have invested billions of dollars into that market if we did not. In order to create and preserve jobs, and we believe in our ability as entertainment companies to drive business. We do not think Atlantic City is but a finite pool, but we do believe it is an important regional destination. Borgata has proven that with record results. If you develop something great with the great people and you make great investments, you can make great things happen. We have a lot of ideas for Atlantic City. We're going to be working with our friends at Caesars to find out how we can further move Atlantic City along. But I will tell you, it's not going to be easy, but we're up for the challenge, and we're looking forward to working with the governor and the state of New Jersey to make sure that Atlantic City's future is far brighter than it has been in the most recent past. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Appreciate it. As Jim mentioned, MGM and Caesars came in together today to have meetings with us. They are really going to be so important to the future of Atlantic City. That's why I'm so glad that Mark Fazora is here as well. He's the president and CEO of Caesars Casinos and Resorts, and someone who has been a long-time proponent and investor in Atlantic City. And so I thank Mark for being here as well and invite him up to make some remarks.
All right, thank you. So yeah, it's a pleasure to be here, and we have made about $300 million of investments in Atlantic City since 2014, and we feel we're proud to have made those investments because we made them together with the state, and really due in large part to the fact that Governor Christie and his administration have done an incredible job clearing regulatory hurdles for us, simplifying regs, as well as all kinds of written things that were redundant, I guess, in different types of legislation had been passed previously. The CRDA was an important part of our investment in the large conference center that we built adjoining to Harrah's. And so, again, we continue to see a lot of vibrancy. In fact, there's not only stability but improvement that we've seen in our numbers in Atlantic City, and it's been one of the biggest reasons, actually, that's helped us improve our operating results over the last couple years. We improved them about $780 million, but almost 15% of that was due to Atlantic City's improvement. So we feel really good that this has been a great investment for us, and we continue to look at reinvestment. And we're obviously redoing and renovating a lot of the rooms right now in our 3 facilities, which is the Caesars Palace, the Bally's, and the Harrah's. And so we feel very good about continuing to invest. And it's been great to have a partner like MGM who is looking at property that we can co-develop together. And they've come up with some really good plans, and we think the future is bright. And we really appreciate the governor's support and everything he did for us to be able to invest and continue to invest in its future.
Thank you. Appreciate it. I told these guys I'd take some questions and that they don't have to. So you guys can feel free to sit
All
down.
right, well, I'll
go,
sit down.
go. Yeah, thank you.
Governor. Thank you.
Thank you, Mark.
Thanks a lot.
So we're excited about it. Senator Chiesa is here as well. He took part in the meeting in his role as the person designated by local government services to be operating in Atlantic City right now. And I think we all appreciate the fact that Senator Chiesa has done things that have actually allowed property taxes to go down in Atlantic City. So something I never thought I'd be standing behind a podium announcing. So, all right, questions?
They asked for anything specific from the state, and were you able to give any assurances on that?
The main thing that we talked about where I was able to give any assurances is continued regulatory relief. And we're certainly going to be working with them and their council to look at additional ways that we can bring Atlantic City's regulatory structure into the 21st century. Nevada has always, quite frankly, from a regulatory perspective, been ahead of New Jersey. In this regard, we've done a lot over the last 7 years to change that, and I think Jim and Mark acknowledged that in their remarks. But we need to do more, and that was the only thing that I gave any specific assurance on. There's some other ideas that they've put out there that we're now looking into, and I suspect we'll have some more things to announce for you in the relatively near future in that regard. But that's the most specific one that I was able to give an assurance on, that we are going to work with them very carefully over the next 30 days or so to try to continue to modernize that regulatory scheme in Atlantic City in order to make it more effective for the state and more efficient for the casinos. You want to follow up?
Yes, please. S1, which I think was 2010, 2011, did a lot of that.
Mhm.
Cleared away a lot of regulations. What still remains to be done?
We'll show you some more specific stuff when we're ready to make moves on them. On those regulations, S1 did do a lot of that, and they're very appreciative for what S1 did. But S1 was not the final word on this. And I think what we wanted to do with S1, and I think it was Senator Sweeney and Speaker Oliver and my approach at the time, was to say, let's give this some time to see how it works and to see what changes we need to make. That's now been given about 6 years or so. And these folks and others who operate in Atlantic City have come back to us over the course of the last 6 months or so, now that they've seen progress being made in Atlantic City from a governmental perspective, to say, listen, we'd be ready to do even more investment if we could have certain amounts of regulatory relief that we think are appropriate. And so Senator Chiesa and I will be working along with our staffs and the staffs of the other casinos in Atlantic City, and I think we'll have some announcements on regulatory changes in the next 30 to 45 days. So.
Comment on whether Atlantic City has the wherewithal to absorb the capacity of the board casino expansion?
I don't really know the answer to that question. I think that the contraction we've had, while unfortunate, has shown now the casinos we have there, almost all of them are showing increased revenues year to year. And as you heard Mark talk about, 15% of all their growth in profit over the last couple of years has come out of Atlantic City. That was certainly not the case a few years ago. And so I'm not a casino expert in that regard. These guys will decide, but when you hear them coming up here and saying that they're looking at new property to develop and new things to do in Atlantic City, both individually and then MGM and Caesars jointly, I think that's a huge change to what we were hearing, Phil, when I first got into office, which was that Atlantic City was dead, casino after casino was closing. There's a much different sound to what they're saying now. And I can't tell you how important I think what we've done over the last 6 to 8 months under Senator Chiesa's leadership has led to this change in attitude among the private business owners. They want stability and sanity in local government. They've had neither in Atlantic City, and now they do. And so I think that's what you're seeing leads to this, and I'm really proud that we're able to finally get it done. You'll recall, because you were here, I wanted to do this in 2010. S1 that was referred to before, I thought that they should have given the powers to us then that they gave to Senator Chiesa in the more recent bill. I think if they had, Atlantic City would have avoided a lot of the pain that they've avoided, that they incurred and are now we're trying to fix. So that's I think the biggest reason I've seen a change in attitude down there. And I think the contraction has helped to some extent as well.
Many of your potential successors, including Democratic Governor Trevor, have said they will end the Atlantic City takeover essentially on day one if they get elected. What's your opinion on that? And do you feel like that would be a move that could lead to future problems?
He's ill-informed, wrong, and he's pandering.
Murphy's
Yeah, that's who you asked about, right? Yeah. So that's what my answer was about. David.
I'm not sure what you're announcing here today.
Not announcing anything. What we're talking about is that these folks in Atlantic City have come here to say that they are ready now to make further investments in Atlantic City. So if you want a headline, that's the headline. MGM Resorts and Caesars are now saying that they're ready to make significant new investments in Atlantic City, and they're going to have announcements about that in the weeks ahead. And that's the headline.
Would that involve any tax incentives for students?
If they qualify for them under the existing, it would not include any new legislation, but if they qualify under the current legislation to have tax incentives, then certainly they'd be eligible to apply. And if it works, remember something about what happens with these tax incentives that they've now been written by the legislature, signed into law by me, and executed by EDA. They are formulaic in nature. There is not any discretion in how we do this. If you hit certain marks and you have certain things that you're willing to guarantee, you get the incentive. If you don't, you can't. And so there's all kinds of conversation about EDA over the course of time, but the fact is that the way that the legislation was written, and I assume as prescriptively as it was written by the legislature that they did that on purpose, was to leave the executive branch with little or no discretion on who gets the incentives. If you meet the points laid out in the statute, you get the incentives. If you don't meet the points, you don't. So if they do meet those points of requirement in the legislation that currently exists, then they would be eligible for those tax credits, and I assume get them. If they don't, they won't. And there was nothing in there today where they asked us to do anything different regarding the incentive programs that we have in place. I don't want to jump their announcements or anger their board of directors or their shareholders, so I won't do any of that. Michael? No, that never even came up. North Jersey never came up the entire time we were talking.
Of the three major candidates running in Tuesday's election, Mayor Guardian and Councilman White, do you have a favorite candidate?
You're looking for me to kill somebody? Is that it? Yeah, no, I don't get involved in that.
Governor, a couple weeks ago, you said we'd see some legislative support for
Hang in there. I'm working. Yep. Listen, President has to make a decision on what he thinks is best for the country as a whole. He's made that decision. I'm not completely familiar with the Paris Climate Agreements as they stand today. I will tell you, when I was a candidate for president, I was in favor of pulling out of the Paris Climate Agreement, and I don't think my opinion has really changed from what it was when I was a candidate for president. David?
Governor, you're almost at 100 days on your school funding.
June 6th.
Ultimatum.
June 6th.
Are we gonna have a big announcement on June the 6th, or?
I don't know. It's not all in my control, David, but remember what I said, that I would give them 100 days to come up with a consensus, and if they didn't, then I would leave myself the ability to act on my own.
What might that include?
Well, why would I tell you before June 6th, David? You wouldn't show up on June 6th, and you know I don't do hypotheticals. Matt?
Just piggybacking off of that, have they at least?
You really want to piggyback off that? That wasn't so great, but okay.
Have they at least come to the table? Have you had talks?
Staff has been meeting regularly, And I've met with the Speaker a number of times, I've met with the Senate President a number of times, and I've met with Senator Kane and Assemblyman Bramnick also. So, yeah. Something's gonna happen, David. I don't know exactly how yet. The plumbing is yet to be determined. But the school funding formula is gonna change.
Senate President and Speaker have gotten along the best of times.
I don't know what you're talking about.
Well, the squabbling in recent days, kind of background as the fight over of a leadership race in the assembly seems to have made the Democratic Party, lead down the street pretty dysfunctional. Does that seem par for the course for you, or has it gotten out of whack and difficult to get things done?
I think we'll determine that in the next 30 days. You know what happens here. I mean, they've done nothing so far this year, have they? Except send me a whole bunch of meaningless bills, many of which I vetoed. I mean, it's the real rubber meets the road in Trenton in 30 days in December and 30 days in June. I mean, they really should only come into session for those times because it's the only time they ever do anything. So I haven't noticed anything yet. We'll find out in the next 30 days whether whatever squabbling is going on between them is going to prevent them from getting things done, including the budget. I'll make it really clear. I stand ready to do the budget as I've done for the last 7 years, on time, in balance, with no delays. And if for some reason it doesn't happen, then it's the fault of the legislature. Because I'm sitting here with my pen, and between my black pen to sign and my red pen to line item veto, there's nothing they could send me that would be beyond my ability to get it done on time. So we'll see what happens. But, I've often said that the job of the governor when you're of the other party of the two leaders of the legislature is often akin to being a marriage counselor. So this is not all that unusual to me. They've had differences before, both Speaker Prieto and the Senate President Sweeney and Speaker Oliver and Senate President Sweeney. So I'm not yet in the frantic stage, but come back to me in 2 weeks, I'll let you know.
Do you have any thoughts about Chris Ray being interviewed for FBI director, and do you have any problems bringing the president and
Chris Ray is an outstanding guy. I first met Chris when he was the Principal Associate Deputy Attorney General in the Bush administration. I was U.S. Attorney. He then became head of the criminal division. I think I have that in the right order. I worked with Chris a lot, particularly on the Bristol-Myers Squibb prosecution that we did. And that's where I got to know Chris the most during our time in the Bush administration. And then obviously Chris represented me in the course of the investigation into the things that happened at the Port Authority with the George Washington Bridge. I have the utmost confidence in Chris. He's an outstanding lawyer. He has absolute integrity and honesty. And I think that the president certainly would not be making a mistake if he asked Chris Ray to be FBI director. I don't know what the president's going to do, what choice he's going to make, but Chris Ray is an outstanding guy, and I think would provide great leadership at the FBI. I think most people who have dealt with Chris over the course of his professional career would tell you the same thing. Really quality person. I don't talk about what advice I give to the President of the United States. I think I might even have a conversation today with Secretary Chow. I think it's on my schedule. It was supposed to be. Is it on my schedule for today? Next week early. Okay. She originally said today, so we'll be talking to Secretary Chow next week. She's the first person that I've got to make sure is on board. She sounds like she's on board, given the testimony she gave before Congress. And then we'll talk to the president as well. But as I've said before, I've spoken to the president about this already. The president understands, not only as the president, but as a real estate owner in New York City, how important this project would be to the future of the economy of the region. So I don't think the president's going to miss this one. It's not going to slide through the cracks. And again, there's no mechanism yet at this point to fund it. The budget is a budget proposal, and as you all know from the things I do with the legislature, I make a proposal, the legislature does what they do, and it's a negotiation. I think it'll be the same thing between the president and Congress, and this is his first chance to get to do it. David?
Governor, while you're still handling transition issues for the then president-elect, do you have any
I didn't know anything about any meetings, so I couldn't be concerned about that of which I did not know.
You're aware of it now.
First of all, I don't know, you know, I'm being very cautious about this, David, because, you know, everything that's being reported is being reported based upon leaks. Nobody that I know of at this point, other than Jim Comey, has put their name to anything. And so I'm not gonna get into speculating on the speculation, because that's what it really is. I'm encouraged by the fact that Jamie Gorelick, who represents Jared, has said that he's absolutely prepared to testify before Congress about whatever it was that he was engaged in. That's great. And I think that shows he's willing to cooperate, unlike others. So that's a good thing. But I don't have any speculation about it, and this comes from me doing my old job. I know, let me tell you something. I know already that Bob Mueller probably knows 10 times what I know. And having had a job like that, I'm confident of that. So I'm not going to sit here and start speculating on things.
Your sense of Jared Kushner as a person is that everything he would have done would have been upright and above board?
Listen, I'm not going to give a warranty to anybody on anything other than myself. What I'm telling you, though, is that I don't have any knowledge about any activities that Jared was involved in what you talked about in terms of meetings with members of the Russian government. And secondly, as I've said before, Jared and I have a very good professional relationship. Yeah.
So there's nothing confirmed publicly that you're supporting Chris Huckabee as the United States Attorney in 2013?
I don't want to confirm anything for you about that. That's, again, falls under the category of advice and counsel that I give to the President of the United States, and I give it to the President.
Any reaction to Kathy Griffin's book on President Obama?
She's disgusting. I mean, you know, that's all. I mean, I could pile on more if you want, but I think she's disgusting, and it's completely outrageous. And I don't think anybody should hire her again for anything. I mean, that kind of stuff. I mean, I want to remind all of you, if some comedian was holding the decapitated head of Barack Obama, I want to wonder what the press reaction would be. And so, you know, for some reason, it seems to be there's two standards that get applied here. Somehow it's different with Donald Trump. I don't think it is. He's the President of the United States. Excuse me, I'm not done my answer yet, David. And then normally you raise your hand, I call on you. You know, let's not turn this into a melee. I mean, Arco's going to start to blush. The fact is that it's outrageous and it's unacceptable. As I feel about the joke Stephen Colbert told, you know, about Putin and President Trump. If they had told that same joke about Putin and President Obama, or how about, you know, one of the leaders of Iran and President Obama? You know, I don't think that would have been acceptable to do to President Obama, and it certainly is absolutely inappropriate and unacceptable to do to President Trump.
It was suggested today in a White House briefing that Ted Nugent said about Barack Obama that he would like him to suck his machine gun and that Hillary Clinton should be lynched.
No, I don't agree with that. I don't agree with that either.
But then Ted Nugent got invited to dinner.
Well, I didn't invite him to dinner. David, talk to the guy who invited him to dinner. But I think that's just as inappropriate. You know, I'm bipartisan on this one, David. I have respect for the presidency. And I think I've shown that in my public actions. You know, 6 days before an election when Barack Obama came here after Hurricane Sandy, I did not play politics with the President of the United States, even though I was arguably the #1 surrogate in the country for Mitt Romney. I believe we have one president at a time, that president has been elected, and that he deserves every ounce of respect you can give them. Politically disagree, of course, we're all free to do that. But it is inappropriate to do those kind of things. And so I don't know whether all the comments you just made about Nugent are accurate. I'll take at your word if they are, because I'm not a big Ted Nugent follower. But if you're relaying them accurately, that's completely inappropriate. As to Secretary Clinton and as to President Obama, in the same way that Kathy Griffin's conduct and Stephen Colbert's conduct is inappropriate as to President Trump. And, you know, people wonder why we have, you know, I hear these comedians and a lot of these other folks on television complaining about the coarseness of our politics. Well, like, which is it first, the chicken or the egg? You know, you got people standing up on television, on the internet, doing this kind of stuff. and they're complaining about the coarseness of politicians, I don't know which one came first, but it's inappropriate. And the country, quite frankly, I think is tired of it. And so I think that's the reaction. I think that was part of CNN's rationale, I'm sure, for firing Kathy Griffin as quickly as they did. You know, this one's not a close call. And by the way, I don't think the Colbert one is a close call either, but, you know. No, we're going to go to Orion first, then I'll come back to you.
Governor Cuomo has put forward a couple names for port authority board, three people, all pretty reliable allies. Some critics say he's trying to expand his authority over the port authority. Do you think that's true? Are you worried about the governor having more power than you do?
No. He has 6 votes, I have 6 votes. I have the chairmanship, he has the ED. He has not a lick more power than me, nor has he ever pretended that he does. And, you know, God bless him that he could put reliable votes on the Port Authority. I wish I could too. You know, but I have a Democratic Senate. He's got a Republican Senate that he's been able to have be pretty viable. So, you know, I don't think that Governor Cuomo has, and I think if you look at the capital plan, remember something. If you want to see where authority is at the Port Authority, the only document you need to look at is the 10-year capital plan. That's it. That's what the Port Authority does. And the 10-year capital plan, New York and New Jersey, for the first time in recent history, have equal spending. And if you think that was easy, and if you think somehow that means that Cuomo has more power than I do, I don't know how you gauge that. And, God love him. He can get reliable votes on the Port Authority. Good for him. I congratulate him for it.
Governor, I'm curious, are you planning to move ahead with the full funding for Amtrak? It seems, starting to get a little hairier when you're going to be prepared. There was some pockets of green yesterday. We've mentioned the possibility before, and they say that it would be, counterproductive for the state.
Well, I'm sure they do think it would be counterproductive. If I told you I didn't like what you wrote and I had some ability to be able to hold back some of your pay, I'm sure you would think that would be counterproductive, right? So, fact is, I have a constituency to represent. And that is the people who ride New Jersey Transit every day vis-a-vis Amtrak. And I'm not going to pay for service that's not being rendered. And so, my view on it is, if they do the job that they've agreed to do, they'll get paid. If they don't do the job they've agreed to do, they won't get paid. And I don't think that's really a controversial theory. We have an agreement that I announced to you all a week or so ago, right? No. We announced an agreement with them, and I went through it with all of you. Was that last Thursday, last Wednesday? I can't keep track of the days, but if they comply with the agreement, they'll get paid. If they don't comply with the agreement, they won't. So in other words, if they run a joint operations center, if they continue to give us free access to inspect the repairs as they're ongoing, there's a whole list of things. If they comply with that, we'll pay. If they don't comply, we won't. And I think that's just representing the people that I've been elected to represent. And my concern is not Amtrak. If Amtrak's concerned about it, do your job. If you do your job, I'll pay you. If you don't do your job, I won't. And so I hate that it's gotten to this point, but let's remember why it's gotten to this point. It's gotten to this point because they didn't do their job in the first place. And then no one had any idea that the tracks were in the kind of disrepair that they're in. And the reason we didn't is because we pay them to maintain them and inspect them. And you'll remember way back when this problem first started, I asked for the ability to be able to perform inspections with them, and they refused to give it to us. Well, now we know why, don't we? They didn't want us to see how bad it was. And then a second derailment happened, and then they couldn't hide any longer. I mean, let's face it, the leadership at Amtrak is dishonest. And they've proven to be dishonest over the course of time. Now, I have to deal with them. They own the tracks that we ride on. So I'm trying to make the best of a bad situation. I think I tried to make that clear last week. I'm not happy with this situation, but this is the situation I've got because we are doing business with someone who's not being reputable and not being honest. And so, one of the remedies I have available to me is to withhold payment for not doing your job. And if they don't do their job, I will withhold payment with no apologies.
Has there been any effect on efficiency or effectiveness of operating out of this building instead of your previous spot? And do you see it having any deleterious impact on your success or not being in the same building for such a time?
Well, I've only been here, I think, 3 days, I think, right? Today's Thursday. Monday, we were off. So I moved in here on Tuesday. So it's hard for me to gauge at this point. I don't know. When you're governor, they usually find you. So I'm not all that worried about it. Listen, I didn't want to move out of the building, but, you know, it's either move out of the building or have the building fall on top of you. Given those two choices, I'd prefer to move out and get the renovation going, and we will get the renovation going very quickly. So, and deleterious effect, I don't see it. You know, listen, my relationship with Steve is now nearly 8 years old. My relationship with Tom is 2 decades long. My relationship with John Bramnick about the same. And my relationship with Vinnie Prieto is at least 5 or 6 years old from the time when he became the budget chair in the assembly. So it's not like we have to introduce ourselves to each other. And, you know, as to Prieto and Sweeney, they have state troopers who drive them around. You know, if they have to drive, if they don't want to walk, they can drive them down here, and they're just. They go. My office is on the 5th floor.
Governor, a few months ago, you had choice words for candidates on both sides, Republican and Democratic, about kind of overselling and giving away the store. What's been your thought about how the election has gone since then? Are you going to be voting on Tuesday?
Of course I'm going to be voting on Tuesday, Matt. I'll be voting up and down the Republican ticket in the primary we got a contested freeholder primary in Morris County from the mail I've been getting in my mailbox, and we have a contested gubernatorial primary, so I'll be voting on Tuesday. I mean, listen, I don't think the campaign's changed much from when we talked about it the last time, so there's no need, I think, for me to repeat the things I said. I stand by the stuff I said before. And, you know, I'll vote for the candidate on Tuesday that I believe would best represent our party and best give us the opportunity to win in November. I'm not going to do that because I'm remaining neutral in the race. As old Governor Kane over there, the last guy to be in my spot did. He remained neutral. I think he set a good example, and I'm remaining neutral too.
You've been critical of pretty much everything.
Well, I mean, when you've asked me, but I've also been complimentary. I mean, let's be fair. You know, when someone asked me about the lieutenant governor's role in job creation in the state and the economic, rebound that we've had in our state, I gave her a good deal of credit for it. And I haven't only been critical, but you know, you guys tend to generally ask me questions that you know I'm going to disagree with, so I will be critical. Like, I get the game, I know. I can say, like, don't you think Jack Chitterelli is a great guy? You know, no one asked me that. You know, if you want to ask me, say, yeah, I think Jack's a great guy. You know, I mean, but you asked me about specific issues that they're advocating that are critical of the positions we've taken and are opposite of the policies that I've tried to implement. Well, what the hell do you expect me to say? Oh, you know, on second thought, damn, I've been wrong for the last 7.5 years. Man, I wish Jack would have told me that from the backbench of the assembly when he first got here. You know, so, you know, generally been critical. You ask the questions that way. You ask questions that are positive, I'll try to be positive.
But you don't have a sense that people in your party are being left to choose between two candidates that aren't as good as the candidate they could have had?
Well, who's the candidate they could have had?
No.
Well, that's my point. Like, listen, the only candidates you can have are the ones who actually choose to run. I mean, you know, I love the people who are on the sidelines who always say, yeah, if I were running, I'd be a lot better. Yeah, like, get your rear end in there and let's see how you do. You know, I've been through this. This is not easy. And I think people underestimate at times how difficult it is to run for governor in this state. It's hard. And I have great admiration for everybody in this race. So here's something positive. I have great admiration for everybody who's in this race because I think it takes a lot to get yourself out there, to raise the money, to go to the events, to do the things, to go through the policy preparation and all the rest of that all these candidates have done. So I have great admiration for anybody who's willing to put themselves in the arena and be able to fight it out. So I have admiration for every one of them that's in the race, except for the knucklehead from, you know, where he's from, Wayne, I think, or whatever. What the hell is it? Yeah, Bill Brennan. No admiration for him. We have no admiration for Bill Brennan. He's a jerk. But the rest of them, I have great admiration for. And so, you know, I don't think you can ever look at an election and say, oh, what if this person ran or what if that person ran? And they didn't. You know, I think we're all disappointed Joe Piscopo is not running, but you know, that's the way life is. You know, we got to put up with disappointment sometimes. Yes, sir. Yeah, you're welcome.
Bill Murphy spent about the money, that's $20 million
Look, come on. You don't, Andrew, you don't really buy that, right? He's a fraud.
Well, you don't think he's gonna?
No, he will. He will. And right now he's up by double digits in the polls that I've seen, right? Against either Lieutenant Governor Guadagno or Assemblyman Citarelli. Let me tell you something. If that gets to single digits, you and I can have whatever bet you want to have about whether a third-party group with anonymous donors will show up with tens of millions of dollars with attack ads against Guadagno. And we won't be able to trace that money until it's long over, if ever, but I guarantee you it's come from Phil and Tammy Murphy. Okay, so this is just such a transparent political ploy from a guy who has unlimited resources and has spent unlimited resources to buy the nomination. He's no different than the guy over there. He's no different than John Corzine. The only difference between Corzine is Phil Murphy doesn't have a beard. That's the only difference between the two of them. They both bought the nomination. They both have experience. At least Corzine had some experience in government. At least he was in the United States Senate for a while. This guy's never had any experience. Seriously? You want to go through the list of people who have been ambassador? How did he get the ambassadorship? He bought it. He bought it. That's who gets to be ambassadors. I mean, seriously. And that's in Republican or Democratic administrations. The people who get to be ambassadors are the best fundraisers, except for those very special situations like China and Russia, who, you know, you get people most of the time who have expertise. But, you know, this is a joke. If his lead continues to be double digits, he'll stick with the public financing. The minute it falls under double digits, if that were to happen, you watch the third-party group that's going to come in. New Jerseyans for a better way, you know, will come in, and all of a sudden they'll have 10 million ads kicking the bejesus out of whoever the Republican nominee is, and Phil Murphy will say, oh, I don't know about that outside group. I have absolutely no idea. Tammy, did the check clear? You know, like, I mean, seriously, come on. So it's a fraud. He's a fraud. It's a fraud. You need to follow up on that? What's left? What's left for me to say? You want me to talk about his dog? I mean, you know, what's left?
In the Democratic primaries, we're all pretty happy being progressive and pretty far away to the left. We see room for a centrist Democrat in New Jersey, or even centrist Republicans in New Jersey.
Like, listen, I think both Kim Guadagno and Jack Citarelli are right of center Republicans. I don't think, listen, they're not Steve Lonigan. I mean, I ran against a right-wing Republican, okay? I remember what it was like. You know, he's a right-wing Republican. I don't think you'd call Jack Citarelli, I mean, Jack Citarelli and Kim Guadagno are both pro-choice. Kim Guadagno is very moderate, in my view, on the issue of handguns. I mean, you start to go through the list of the normal checklist of how you determine someone is right-wing. I don't think we have a right-wing candidate. So I think there are room for centrist, right-of-center Republican candidates for governor of New Jersey, because I think both Guadagno and Citarelli are right-of-center people. On the listen, on the Democratic side, yeah, they're all screaming to get to the left of each other, and you know, we're going to see whether that matters or not come November. You know, it's different when you're talking to a Democratic primary electorate, which is generally very liberal, and then we have to speak to a general electorate. Whereas we know in New Jersey, you got to win a decent amount of the independent vote to be able to be elected. And so you got to be careful at times about going too far left or right if you want to try to attract that vote. Dustin.
Going back to Andrew's original question about the election has called for a long time for some reform outside of our finance. If there's a Democrat in the governor's office next year, chances of any legislation that is happening is probably
Yeah, agreed. No, because I have a Democratic legislature. I have a Democratic legislature who doesn't want to do it. I mean, they've had outside groups that you know full well about. Listen, I've said all along, I would be happy to sign campaign finance reform that says unlimited donations, no more third-party groups, outlaw third-party groups in New Jersey, and unlimited contributions to candidates and 24-hour disclosure. Then you get rid of the third-party groups. And all of you will know within 24 hours, we have the technology to do that now, and you don't even have to have ELEC do it. You make the candidates do it. Usually the site is better than ELEC's, right? You search ELEC's website, right? So my point is, like, Phil Murphy's website, Kim Guadagno's website are clearly better than ELEC's. You could make a requirement that the candidate has to reveal every 24 hours all contributions. And that would get rid of all of this. And get rid of the artificial limits too, because all people do is go around them. They use outside groups to go around the limits. That's why Andrew's question, while well-intentioned, is like, come on, we all know what's going on here. Phil Murphy, all of a sudden, he spends $21 million already, and all of a sudden today he's like, oh no, but I'd like to be restricted by the limits. Come on. He wouldn't be here if there were limits. If there were limits on spending, Phil Murphy wouldn't be a serious candidate for governor. He became a serious candidate for governor because he wrote checks to every man, woman, and child who mattered in the Democratic Party to buy their support. Come on. What in his background makes him a serious candidate for governor of New Jersey? I don't know. Because he was ambassador to Germany? Is he appealing to our particularly large German-American community in New Jersey? Like, I don't know. But the fact is, from a campaign perspective, his promise to limit himself to that, if it doesn't mean anything, then you all got to get him to promise that he will call for any third-party groups to take ads down, who put them on in support of him, and that he, his wife, or any other member of his family, current or extended, will not give money to any third-party groups. I mean, then you start to, put a little pen around them. But at this point, this promise is meaningless, totally meaningless, for a guy who has unlimited resources. Yeah.
Given that they're so-called independent groups, I mean, theoretically, there's nothing they can commit. They actually come out and say.
Right, and when I say something like that, you just never buy it. Right, so my point is that, like, if you want, listen, you guys decide what kind of role you want. I'm not running. You want to buy it? You believe that baloney? Then believe it.
You think we should take a candidate seriously when they come out and say, I disavow any kind of group outside spending, that.
If a candidate comes out and says, take the ads down, I don't want them to take the ads down, and promises not to give any money nor solicit any money from him, his family, or any of his business partners. You know how this game works. Oh, I didn't write the check, my wife wrote the check. Oh, I didn't write the check, my son wrote the check. I mean, like, you guys know this. This is not like, I'm not splitting the act. You all know this. You've covered enough campaigns to know it. All I'm saying is, and the only reason I'm getting into this is because you've asked about the importance of him pledging that he'll stay in the public. It's a joke. It's a complete joke, and he knows it. And I guarantee you, take it to the bank. He falls below double digits, the third-party money will come out in droves. And he will be the person who's both asking for it, and he may be, in fact, the person who's supplying it. Well, I don't know. It's that I don't agree with him. On a personal level, I think he's a perfectly nice guy. He's a perfectly pleasant guy to have a drink with or dinner. He's a nice guy. He's done a lot of good things with his life, but as he's displayed over time, I don't think we agree on a whole heck of a lot. And I hate when politicians make meaningless gestures like that. Oh, I've already spent $21 million, but now I'm willing to be restricted on how much I spend. The horse is out of the barn already. You were going to be restricted. You should have restricted yourself in the primary. But if he had restricted himself in the primary, Sal, he wouldn't be in first place. He wouldn't have 21 county lines. If he hadn't been writing checks to the likes of John Kerry, he wouldn't have the lines. So we know this. We saw it happen before. This is not like speculative. We saw his partner at Goldman Sachs do exactly the same thing. So if what New Jersey wants is a return to Goldman Sachs politics, because that was incredibly successful for the state, I will tell you the happiest people in the world to see a return to Goldman Sachs politics will be whoever the Republican candidates would be if he won in 2017, in 2021. Because he is a dead certain loser if he does that. And by the way, as I went through my history lesson last week, I'm not just speculating on this. This is what's happened in this state over the last 40 years. No two-term Democratic governors. Yeah, I had a meeting last week about it. Yeah, I think you'll see it pass between now and June 30th. Well, if it's legislation, the plan design committees have nothing to say about it. hence the legislation. Yes, sir.
Earlier you talked about the coarseness of political dialogue, not the first we've done over the past few weeks, that the Griffin photo, other examples of that. When it comes to things like sit down and shut up, when it comes to things like yelling people at rallies, when it comes to things like
Let me tell you something. I've never yelled at somebody. I've never yelled at anybody in a rally who didn't yell at me first. And here's the rule that I've had all along. And I said it at the beginning of all the town halls that I did, 125 or so town hall meetings that I did over the course of my career. The last rule, as those people who were tortured enough to have to go to so many of them and used to, hate when I'd go through the 4 rules, right? The 4th rule was, if you give it, you're getting it back. Now, there's a difference there. You can't compare that to holding up a bloodied, beheaded head of the President of the United States. To sell something, well, you kind of are through the question, okay? So you can't compare the two of them. And by the way, if you remember sit down and shut up, I would say sit down and shut up again today to a guy who in the middle of a Sandy anniversary rally, a Democratic candidate for office, stands up, holds up a sign, blocks all the cameras, has the camera people yelling. I offer to meet with him after the speech if he'll sit down. I offer to have my staff meet with him. All of that happened before I said sit down and shut up. And I only said that when it became clear that the guy wasn't looking to have a dialogue or having me help him solve a problem. He was looking to create a disturbance to get some name for himself politically. Well, if you're going to play that game, then you're damn right I'm going to tell you to sit down and shut up. That's not coarseness. Coarseness is showing a beheaded, bloody head of the President of the United States. Coarseness is suggesting what Stephen Colbert suggested about President Trump and Mr. Putin. Coarseness is the things that David rattled off. I don't remember all of them, something about a machine gun in the mouth or something like that, that Ted Nugent supposedly said about Barack Obama and Hillary Clinton. But, getting in a dialogue with your constituents, especially constituents in this state, if they're going to stand up at a meeting and not conduct themselves with decorum, then I didn't get elected to be a heavy bag. And I've told people this over and over again. I have 2 arms also. I won't throw the first punch, but if you throw it, I'll throw it back. And of course, by those things, I mean verbal, not actual punches. Because of course, one time when I asked someone to take a bat to someone, we had a week of, faux drama about that when everyone knew it was a phrase of not actual taking a bat to someone, but rhetorically doing it. So I don't mean I actually punch someone. I mean, I would verbally do so. So, you guys want to take short snippets from things. And the worst part is, I don't think you were around then, maybe you were, but you all know the context of some of those things. And the context is, I announced it at every town hall meeting. If you give it, you're going to get it in return. Because I don't get paid enough to take it. And nor should anybody else in this state have to take it. Someone wants to be verbally abusive, give it back.
But is there always an option to take it out of
No, there's not. No, not for me, there's not. No. And by the way, plenty of times I've ignored people who have yelled and sat there and held the microphone and allowed people to be escorted out and all the rest. I've done that plenty of times. You are perfect, I'm sure, and you would always take the high road, and that's, I'm sure, why you would ask a question like that, because your perfection, well, I know you're not governor, but you're a human being, and everybody in that audience is not governor either. And no, when you're elected governor, it doesn't mean that what you do is to allow yourself to be abused. That's not part of the program. Now, you have to take some of it, and I do take some of it. Every day I take some of it. But if someone I think goes over the line, and that's my judgment to make, not yours, I get to respond. You want to write about it or report about it, write and report about it. But for you to have the audacity to come in and compare that to what Kathy Griffin did, just shows why you're standing there holding the iPhone. Anything else?
When's the next town hall?
Well, we'll do some, listen, I'm not going to do anything to impede upon the campaign season. Like, once we got into January of 2017, and we have a gubernatorial campaign going on, I am not going to compete with the candidates. This is not my show to be out there and doing that kind of stuff. I'll do events on policy issues, but, I'll do a few town hall meetings to wrap up once we're done, post-November, or whatever the date is of Election Day. I'll do a few before we leave, but I'm not going to do them now because I don't want to be a competitor in any way to the people who are competing for this job. I don't think it's appropriate for me to do. When I have announcements to make, when I have, you know, things that I'm going to announce to the public that are part of my governmental function, that's fine. If I get invited to a campaign event or a campaign rally by the Republican candidate for governor, I'll certainly speak and do my thing, but I'm not going to go off and do stuff on my own. My time is over in that regard. And my only job now, especially after Tuesday, is governmental. Because Tuesday, whoever wins the Republican primary is going to be the titular head of the Republican Party. Will take over the NJGOP. And my job is then purely governmental, vis-a-vis New Jersey, and any candidates that I want to support. But it's not for me to go out there and be pushing myself in a town hall kind of way where you're going to draw attention from the candidates. Now, if I'm making an announcement about the Trenton Initiative like we did this week, or the OIT signing that we did today, that's all governmental stuff, and I think not only appropriate, but necessary for me to do. But town hall meetings have always been discretionary. Most governors haven't done them. I did a lot of them, because I thought it was a great way for me to communicate my message to the public and to hear from them. But they're going to have candidates to hear now. They should hear from them, and they should hear from them unimpeded by me. I just think it's the right thing to do. Let them have the stage. They've earned it. They're both, whoever the nominees are going to be, they've earned the right to compete against each other, have their voices be the loudest in the political debate over the course of the next number of months, and then let the people decide who they want to be the 56th governor. And I don't think the 55th governor should be getting in the middle of that and, you know, trying to say, hey, whoa, look over here, what about me? I've had plenty of time in the spotlight. I'm satiated. Anything else? All right, thank you all very much. Hope you enjoy the new accommodations. Yeah, well, we'll work on that. We're working on the light thing too. They're probably a little bit low. They're in my eyes and makes me not see you as clearly as I'd like to, David, which is a disappointment. But you have Arco in front of you, so there's a good contrast. You guys, blue shirt, white shirt, that's working for me. The pink shirt on Hutchins, I'm not so sure about, but you know, I don't know if it works for you. That's all I'm worried about, Ryan. I don't know if it works for you. I like the pink, but I don't know if it works for you. But we'll see you all next week. Thank you all for coming today. Appreciate it.
Hey guys, just watch the portraits when you pull down your sticks. Make sure you don't bump into them.